Do you ever find yourself constantly thinking about what others think of you? Or maybe you're overthinking every little detail, trying to figure out how to please everyone around you. What if I told you that this constant worry and stress could be holding you back from true peace and happiness? Could it be that you're spending so much time focusing on others that you're losing sight of your own joy? We all experience moments where we care too much about others' opinions, don't we? Whether it's worrying about how we look, what we say, or how we come across in social situations. But what if I told you that Buddhism has something powerful to say about this habit? Something that could completely change the way you see yourself and your relationships with others? Imagine for a moment a person who is always overthinking, constantly anxious about what others might say. How exhausting does that sound? Now, imagine someone who is calm, at peace with themselves, and unaffected by the judgments around them. The difference between these two people is not just luck. It's a choice. A choice to let go of unnecessary thoughts and attachments, and to embrace a more peaceful, mindful way of living. Welcome to Wisdom Woven. In today's video, we'll explore how you can free your mind from the constant chatter of others' opinions, and how Buddhism teaches us to focus on our own inner peace. But before we dive in, let me remind you, there are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% of you subscribe. So please, like, comment, share, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And please, drop your thoughts in the comments below. As we journey through this video, we'll look at how attachment to others' opinions can keep us trapped in a cycle of overthinking and how Buddhism offers a way out. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to start letting go of these unnecessary worries so you can focus on what truly matters, your own peace of mind and happiness. Stay with us as we unravel this wisdom, understanding attachment through the lens of Buddhism. In our daily lives, we are constantly interacting with people, environments, and situations that shape our thoughts and emotions. One thing we often don't realize is how deeply attached we become to these external factors. This attachment is what leads to overthinking, anxiety, and stress. But according to Buddhism, attachment is not only unnecessary, it's the root cause of much of our suffering. So, what does Buddhism say about attachment, and how can we begin to understand it? Let's start by understanding that attachment, in Buddhist philosophy, refers to a deep craving or clinging to things, people, or outcomes. This attachment is not just physical, it is mental and emotional. We attach ourselves to ideas, desires, and expectations, and when those attachments are threatened or unfulfilled, we experience suffering. This is the first of what is called the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. Suffering exists, and much of it comes from our attachments. You may be wondering, why is attachment so harmful? Don't we need attachments to survive or feel connected? It's a good question. Attachment itself is not inherently bad. It is part of our nature as human beings. However, the problem arises when our attachments become excessive or misguided. For example, when we cling to the approval of others or chase after material possessions with an unhealthy obsession, we lose our sense of inner peace. We stop living in the present moment and start living for the next thing, always thinking, when I get this or when I have that, then I will be happy. Buddha taught that all things are impermanent. This means that everything in our lives, the people, possessions, and experiences we cherish, are temporary. If we cling to these things, we are bound to experience disappointment when they inevitably change or fade away. This impermanence is something we cannot escape, but we can choose how we respond to it. Imagine for a moment that you've bought a new phone. You've waited for weeks, saved up, and finally, it's yours. You feel overjoyed. But after a few months, a new model comes out. Suddenly, the joy you once felt begins to fade, and you start wishing you had the newer version. This is the nature of attachment. We hold on tightly to things that give us temporary pleasure, but that pleasure is fleeting. The more we cling, the more we suffer. Buddhism teaches us that in order to break free from this cycle of attachment, we must practice letting go. This is not about abandoning the things we love or the people we care about. Instead, it's about developing a mindset that understands that nothing is permanent and that our happiness does not depend on external things. It's about finding contentment in the present moment, regardless of what we have or don't have. When we become less attached to the outcomes of our lives, we start to experience a sense of freedom. We begin to see that we can still enjoy the things we love, but without depending on them for our happiness. Whether it's a person, a job, or a material possession, we learn to appreciate them without tying our identity or sense of self-worth to them. This shift in mindset is the first step towards inner peace. Another key concept in Buddhism is the idea of non-attachment. Non-attachment is not about detaching from life altogether or becoming indifferent. Rather, it is about being able to experience life fully without clinging to it. Think of a beautiful sunset. You may watch it, feel awe, and appreciate its beauty. But when it fades away, you don't feel sadness or longing. You simply acknowledge that it was beautiful in that moment, and you let it go. This is the essence of non-attachment. Now, you may be wondering, how do we practice non-attachment in our daily lives? The answer lies in mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment or distraction. When we practice mindfulness, we start to recognize the moments when we are clinging to something, whether it's a thought, an emotion, or a desire, and we gently let it go. We train ourselves to be okay with the impermanence of life and to trust that happiness comes from within, not from external circumstances. A simple way to begin practicing non-attachment is by observing your thoughts. Pay attention to the things you constantly worry about or crave. Are you clinging to past experiences, wishing things were different? Are you obsessing over future outcomes that are out of your control? The key is to notice these patterns without judgment. By simply acknowledging your attachments, you create space to let them go. It's also important to remember that letting go doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing your emotions. In Buddhism, emotions are seen as natural and transient. They come and go like waves in the ocean. When we practice mindfulness, we can experience our emotions fully without being overwhelmed by them. Instead of reacting impulsively, we learn to observe our emotions with curiosity and compassion, allowing them to pass without clinging to them. One powerful meditation practice in Buddhism that helps with attachment is called metta, or loving-kindness meditation. In this practice, you cultivate feelings of love and compassion for yourself and others. As you repeat phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be free from suffering," you start to release the attachments to the negative thoughts or judgments you hold about yourself. Over time, this practice helps you develop a sense of inner peace and acceptance, regardless of external circumstances. Buddhism also teaches that attachment to self-identity is one of the strongest forms of attachment. We often define ourselves by our roles, titles, and accomplishments, but this attachment to a fixed self can be limiting. Buddha encouraged us to see ourselves as ever-changing beings, not bound by labels or past experiences. By loosening our grip on our self-identity, we open ourselves to growth and transformation. It's important to recognize that the process of letting go and releasing attachments is not an overnight change. It takes time, practice, and patience. But with each step, we begin to experience more freedom and peace. Instead of being dragged around by our desires and expectations, we start to live in harmony with the flow of life. We become more present, more connected to ourselves, and less affected by external circumstances. In the next part of this video, we'll dive deeper into how overthinking is linked to our attachments and how we can free ourselves from this mental burden. But for now, remember this: attachment doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you are willing to appreciate everything in your life, but without depending on it for your happiness. This shift in perspective is the key to finding peace within yourself. How overthinking harms your mind and spirit. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself caught in a loop of thoughts where you just can't seem to stop thinking about the same thing over and over again? It might be something small, like a conversation you had earlier, or something you said that you regret, or maybe it's a larger issue, like a problem at work or in a relationship. You keep running these thoughts through your mind, trying to find a solution, but the more you think, the more confused and anxious you become. This is the nature of overthinking, and it's something that we all experience at some point in our lives. In Buddhism, we recognize overthinking as a form of mental attachment, a kind of grasping onto thoughts and ideas that create unnecessary suffering. When we overthink, we become trapped in our own minds, spiraling further and further into worry, doubt, and fear. But the real danger is that overthinking doesn't just affect your mind. It also harms your spirit. Overthinking is like a storm that clouds your inner peace. It creates mental chaos, making it harder to focus on what truly matters. Your mind becomes restless, jumping from one thought to the next, unable to find stillness. This restlessness is often accompanied by anxiety or stress, which further disrupts your sense of calm. It's like trying to meditate while a loud, noisy crowd is shouting around you. How can you possibly find peace in that? What's worse is that the more we overthink, the more we begin to attach our identity to these thoughts. We start to believe that our thoughts are who we are. If we're constantly thinking about something, it becomes part of our self-image. We might identify with our worries, our regrets, or our fears. This is a dangerous trap. In Buddhism, this attachment to thoughts is called mental clinging, and it's one of the main causes of suffering. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, including our thoughts. Thoughts come and go, like clouds in the sky. When we cling to them, we hold on to something that's always changing. It's like trying to hold on to a cloud. It's impossible. And yet, this is what we do when we overthink. We grasp onto our thoughts, believing that if we just think hard enough, we can solve every problem or make everything perfect. But the truth is, this only causes more suffering. When we overthink, we also lose touch with the present moment. Instead of being fully aware of what's happening around us, we're lost in a mental maze of past regrets or future anxieties. We miss out on the simple joys of life because we're too busy dwelling on things that aren't even real yet. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the peace that can only be found in the present moment. Think about it this way. When you're overthinking, your mind is like a busy marketplace. There are so many voices, so many distractions, and so much noise. It's hard to hear the quiet, inner voice of wisdom that exists deep within you. But when you stop overthinking, when you let go of the need to control every thought, your mind becomes like a calm lake. The surface of the water is still, and you can see clearly. Overthinking also affects our physical well-being. The constant mental chatter can lead to stress, which in turn can cause physical symptoms like headaches, fatigue, and muscle tension. Our bodies and minds are deeply connected, and when our minds are in turmoil, our bodies feel the impact. This is why many people who struggle with overthinking also struggle with physical ailments. In Buddhism, we understand that the mind and body are interconnected, and true well-being can only be achieved when both are at peace. When the mind is calm, the body is also more relaxed and at ease. This is why practices like meditation are so powerful. They help quiet the mind, allowing us to let go of unnecessary thoughts and return to a state of balance. But the effects of overthinking aren't just physical. They also have a profound impact on our emotional state. When we overthink, we become consumed by negative emotions. We start to believe that our worries and fears are real, and this can lead to feelings of anxiety, anger, or sadness. Our emotions become tied to our thoughts, creating a vicious cycle. The more we think, the more we feel, and the more we feel, the more we think. In Buddhism, we call this the cycle of samsara, the endless loop of suffering caused by attachment and craving. Overthinking is one of the ways in which we keep ourselves trapped in this cycle. But the good news is, just like any other habit, overthinking can be changed. It takes practice, awareness, and the willingness to let go of the need to control our thoughts. One of the key teachings in Buddhism is the idea of mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in the moment without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts without becoming attached to them. Instead of getting caught up in the story our mind is creating, we can simply watch the thoughts come and go like clouds passing through the sky. Mindfulness helps us recognize when we're starting to overthink. The first step is becoming aware of the thoughts that are creating anxiety or stress. Once we're aware, we can gently bring our focus back to the present moment, letting go of the need to control or fix everything. It's not about trying to stop our thoughts altogether. It's about learning not to get lost in them. Over time, with consistent practice, mindfulness helps us break free from the cycle of overthinking. We learn to respond to situations with clarity and calmness, rather than reacting out of fear or anxiety. The mind becomes less cluttered, and our thoughts become more focused and clear. We can think more effectively, without getting trapped in endless loops of worry and doubt. So, how can we start to let go of overthinking? The first step is to cultivate awareness. Start by paying attention to when your mind begins to spiral. Notice the thoughts that are causing stress or anxiety, and gently remind yourself that these thoughts do not define you. They are just thoughts, and they will pass. Another important practice is meditation. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools in Buddhism for calming the mind and breaking free from overthinking. By sitting in stillness and focusing on the breath, we train the mind to become more focused and less distracted. Over time, meditation helps us develop a greater sense of inner peace and clarity. But perhaps the most important lesson we can learn from Buddhism is that we don't have to believe everything our mind tells us. Our thoughts are not truths. They are simply passing phenomena. When we stop clinging to them, when we stop trying to control them, we create space for peace and wisdom to enter. In the next part of this video, we'll explore how Buddhist teachings can help us release our attachment to overthinking and how we can start living with greater peace and clarity. But for now, remember this: your thoughts are not you. You are not your worries, your regrets, or your fears. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, the stillness that can observe them without becoming overwhelmed. And when you realize this, you begin to break free from the endless cycle of overthinking and step into a life of peace and freedom. The roots of overthinking in human nature. Overthinking often feels like a never-ending cycle, doesn't it? We think about something, then we think about thinking about it, and before we know it, we're lost in an endless loop. This cycle becomes so deep and tangled that it can feel impossible to escape. But the truth is, this overthinking is not something new or unique to us. It's part of being human. In Buddhism, we learn that our mind is like a wild monkey, constantly jumping from one thought to another. This is called the monkey mind. It's as if our thoughts are chasing each other, bouncing off the walls of our mind, creating noise and confusion. And the more we try to control it, the more restless it becomes. Why does this happen? The root of overthinking comes from something very natural to human beings: attachment. We attach meaning to everything. We create stories around situations, people, and even our own emotions. When we do this, we get trapped in our thoughts, unable to see things clearly. Instead of experiencing the present moment, we get lost in our fears, doubts, and imagined scenarios. This attachment creates a kind of mental clutter, and just like physical clutter in a room, it becomes harder to find clarity. Overthinking is a product of fear. We fear making the wrong decision, saying the wrong thing, or being misunderstood. These fears are often based on past experiences or imagined outcomes. For example, think about a conversation you had earlier today. You might replay it in your mind, wondering if you said the wrong thing, or if the other person took something the wrong way. This is overthinking at its core. It's a fear-driven response, an attempt to control or predict the future by analyzing every little detail. This fear comes from our desire for security. We want to feel in control of our lives, and overthinking is a way of trying to gain that control. But here's the irony. The more we try to control our thoughts, the more chaotic they become. Just like trying to control a river with our hands, the more we grasp at the thoughts, the more they slip away, causing even more turbulence. In Buddhist teachings, this attachment to thoughts is also tied to the concept of self. We overthink because we have a strong attachment to our ego, to the idea of who we think we are and how we want others to see us. We try to protect this self-image, fearing that if we don't live up to it, we'll be judged or rejected. This attachment to self keeps us trapped in the cycle of overthinking. Buddha taught that the self is an illusion. The idea of a fixed, unchanging self is a mental construct. In reality, we are constantly changing, just like the world around us. But because we attach so strongly to this idea of who we are, we create stories and worries around it. These stories can be about how we look, how we behave, or how others perceive us. And when these stories are threatened, our minds go into overdrive, trying to figure out how to protect our sense of self. But what happens when we let go of this attachment? What if we stop trying to control our thoughts and simply allow them to flow without judgment? When we do this, we begin to experience a kind of freedom. The chaos of overthinking starts to settle, and the mind becomes quieter, more peaceful. Buddhism offers us a powerful antidote to overthinking: mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment or attachment. Instead of getting lost in our thoughts, mindfulness teaches us to observe them with awareness. When we are mindful, we can see our thoughts as they arise, but we don't hold on to them. We let them pass by, like clouds in the sky. This practice of mindfulness is not about forcing the mind to be still or suppressing thoughts. It's about noticing them without getting caught up in them. When we become aware of how our mind jumps from one thought to another, we can gently bring our focus back to the present moment. With practice, we begin to see that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness behind them. One powerful Buddhist meditation technique is the body scan. In this practice, you bring your attention to each part of your body, starting from the tips of your toes and moving up to your head. As you do this, you become fully aware of your physical sensations, which helps anchor you in the present moment. This practice can be incredibly effective in calming the mind and breaking the cycle of overthinking. Another key practice in Buddhism is letting go. We often hold on to thoughts, memories, and emotions that no longer serve us. These attachments keep us tied to the past, preventing us from living fully in the present. But when we learn to let go, we free ourselves from the grip of overthinking. Letting go is not about ignoring or suppressing our emotions. It's about acknowledging them, accepting them, and then releasing them without attachment. So, how can we start to let go of our overthinking habits? It begins with awareness. The next time you catch yourself overthinking, simply pause and take a deep breath. Notice the thoughts, but don't identify with them. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. This simple shift in perspective can help you break free from the cycle of overthinking and bring more peace into your life. Another helpful practice is to focus on the present moment. Overthinking usually happens when we're either regretting the past or worrying about the future. But right now, in this moment, you are safe. You don't need to control everything, and you don't need to have all the answers. Simply breathe and allow yourself to be fully present in the here and now. When we start to understand the root causes of overthinking, attachment, fear, and the illusion of self, we begin to see that there is a way out. Through mindfulness, letting go, and being present, we can break the cycle of overthinking and find peace of mind. This is the essence of Buddhist teachings: letting go of the unnecessary and embracing the simplicity of the present moment. So, next time you find yourself caught in the web of overthinking, remember that you have the power to choose. You can choose to let go, to be present, and to find peace. The path is not always easy, but with practice, you'll start to notice the quietness of your mind and the calmness of your spirit. And that, my friend, is the true freedom. Buddhist perspectives on emotional freedom. When we talk about emotional freedom, what do we really mean? It's the ability to experience our emotions fully without being controlled by them. In Buddhism, this is often referred to as detachment. But don't misunderstand. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. It means understanding that emotions, like everything else in life, come and go. They are not permanent, and they do not define who we are. In life, emotions are as natural as the wind. Sometimes they blow gently, and sometimes they can be wild and strong. But whether they're calm or fierce, we don't need to be swept away by them. Just as we wouldn't let a strong gust of wind carry us off, we don't have to let our emotions dictate our every action or thought. This is where emotional freedom comes in. The goal is not to suppress emotions, but to cultivate a space of awareness where we can observe our feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Buddhism teaches us that the key to emotional freedom lies in mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully aware of the present moment, without judgment. It's the ability to observe our thoughts and feelings as they arise, without becoming attached to them. For example, when you feel anger rising, instead of reacting immediately, mindfulness allows you to pause and recognize the feeling. You understand it's just a passing emotion, not something that needs to control you. This space of awareness is where freedom lives. One of the most powerful Buddhist teachings is about impermanence. In Buddhism, we believe that everything in life is temporary: emotions, situations, and even life itself. This includes the emotional highs and lows we go through. When you embrace this truth, you realize that no matter how intense a feeling is in the moment, it won't last forever. It's a reminder that nothing in life is permanent, and that gives us a sense of emotional freedom. We can let go of the need to hold on to every emotion or fear, knowing that they will fade away, just like everything else. But why is this so important? Because when we get attached to our emotions, we give them power over us. For example, if you're angry with someone, and you hold on to that anger, it consumes you. It's like carrying a heavy stone in your backpack. The longer you hold on to it, the heavier it gets. But if you recognize that anger is just a feeling, not a part of who you are, you can choose to let go of it. The stone can be set down. The burden is lifted. Another important concept in Buddhism is non-attachment. This doesn't mean not caring or being indifferent. It means not clinging to things, people, or experiences in such a way that we lose our peace when they change or disappear. When we are attached to an outcome, we set ourselves up for disappointment. If we become too attached to how we think things should be, we forget that life has its own flow and rhythm. Non-attachment encourages us to embrace life as it is, without the need to control or fix everything. Think of a tree in the wind. The tree does not fight the wind. It bends and moves with it. Similarly, when we practice non-attachment, we learn to bend with life's challenges and changes, rather than fighting against them. We stop trying to control every situation and instead focus on how we respond to what comes our way. One Buddhist practice that directly addresses emotional freedom is compassionate detachment. This practice teaches us to show compassion for others without becoming emotionally entangled in their problems. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when we see someone we care about in pain. We want to fix things, make them better. But in Buddhism, we learn that true compassion comes from understanding that we cannot control another person's emotions. What we can do is offer our presence, our kindness, and our support without becoming emotionally burdened by their struggles. This kind of detachment can seem difficult at first. We often feel like we need to take on the pain of others in order to help them. But the truth is, by carrying someone else's burden, we may only add to our own suffering. Compassionate detachment allows us to help others without losing our inner peace. It's a delicate balance, but when practiced, it leads to emotional freedom, not only for ourselves but for those around us. When we talk about emotional freedom, we also need to address the role of forgiveness. Holding on to grudges and resentments is one of the biggest emotional burdens we can carry. In Buddhism, forgiveness is not about excusing someone else's behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the anger and bitterness that come from being attached to past wrongs. Forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, not to the other person. By letting go of resentment, you release yourself from the emotional prison you've created. Forgiveness can be hard, especially when we've been hurt deeply. But Buddhism teaches us that holding on to anger only causes more pain. The person who wronged us may not even be aware of the hurt they caused, and meanwhile, we continue to suffer by holding on to that hurt. Forgiveness, then, is an act of liberation. It's a conscious decision to release the chains of the past and step into emotional freedom. In practice, emotional freedom is not a destination but a journey. It's about learning to navigate life's emotional waves with mindfulness and compassion. It's about observing your feelings without judgment, embracing the impermanence of everything, and choosing to let go of attachments that keep you bound to suffering. Buddhism encourages us to see our emotions not as enemies but as teachers. Every emotion we experience is an opportunity for growth. If we can learn to sit with our emotions, rather than push them away, we begin to understand their nature. We realize that emotions are not permanent, not who we are, and certainly not something that should control us. Instead, they are part of the ebb and flow of life, and we can choose how we respond to them. In this journey of emotional freedom, we also learn the importance of self-compassion. In our effort to let go of attachments and overthinking, we must first learn to be kind to ourselves. Often, we are our own harshest critics. But Buddhism teaches that we must treat ourselves with the same compassion we extend to others. When we show ourselves kindness and understanding, we create the space for emotional freedom to flourish. Buddhism also reminds us that emotional freedom is connected to the freedom from the self. The ego is the part of us that clings to identities, to stories, to the need to be right, or to be seen in a certain way. The ego feeds our emotional attachments, making us more vulnerable to the ups and downs of life. But when we let go of the ego, we release ourselves from the prison of self-centered thoughts. We become freer to experience life as it is, without the need to control or judge. This does not mean we lose our individuality or stop caring about ourselves. Rather, we stop identifying so strongly with our thoughts, emotions, and external circumstances. When we let go of the ego, we can respond to life from a place of wisdom and compassion, rather than fear or desire. In the end, emotional freedom is about understanding. Understanding that emotions are fleeting, understanding that we are not our emotions, and understanding that we can live in harmony with them without being ruled by them. It is through mindfulness, compassion, forgiveness, and detachment that we can achieve this freedom. When we begin to apply these teachings in our lives, we find that emotional freedom doesn't just change how we experience our feelings, it changes how we experience life itself. We become more present, more peaceful, and more connected to the world around us. So, in the next few steps, we will explore how to practice these teachings in simple, everyday ways. But for now, take a moment to reflect on your own emotional life. How often do you allow your emotions to control you? And how can you begin to use the tools of Buddhism to regain your emotional freedom? The path is simple, but it requires practice, patience, and a willingness to let go. Practices to release attachments and overthinking. In Buddhism, the concept of attachment is at the heart of suffering. It's the reason we experience so much pain and confusion. When we are attached to something, whether it's an idea, a person, or even a specific outcome, our happiness becomes dependent on that thing. If it's taken away or doesn't go as expected, we feel the sharp sting of disappointment and sorrow. But what if we could release that attachment? What if we didn't have to let our happiness hinge on the shifting winds of life? Releasing attachments doesn't mean we stop caring. It doesn't mean we shut ourselves off from the world or stop having meaningful relationships. It simply means that we no longer allow these external factors to control our inner peace. Buddhism offers several practices that can help us achieve this freedom. Let's explore them together, so you can begin to experience the calm that comes with letting go. 1. Mindfulness meditation. One of the core practices in Buddhism is mindfulness meditation. It's simple, but incredibly powerful. The essence of mindfulness is to be present in the moment, to observe your thoughts without judgment, and to let them come and go like clouds in the sky. By doing this, we begin to recognize that our thoughts are not who we are. They are just passing events in the mind. When we practice mindfulness, we learn not to cling to our thoughts. If a worry arises, whether it's about someone's opinion of us, our future, or something we did wrong, we don't have to grab hold of it. Instead, we acknowledge it and let it pass. This practice can be done anywhere. Sitting quietly for a few minutes each day, observing your breath, or even while walking or eating. The more we practice, the easier it becomes to release the grip of overthinking. 2. Letting go of expectations. A major cause of attachment is the expectations we place on ourselves and others. We expect life to unfold in a certain way, and when it doesn't, we become frustrated or disappointed. In Buddhism, there's a saying, expectation is the root of all suffering. This doesn't mean we shouldn't set goals or have desires. What it means is that we must learn to accept that life will not always follow our plan. Instead of holding on tightly to expectations, we can practice flexibility and acceptance. When we let go of rigid expectations, we open ourselves to life as it is, without judgment. We embrace the present moment and allow things to unfold naturally, without forcing them to be something they're not. This release from expectation brings a sense of freedom and peace. 3. Loving-kindness meditation, metta. Another powerful practice in Buddhism is loving-kindness meditation, or metta. This practice involves sending love and goodwill to yourself and others. It starts with you, by cultivating compassion for your own self. We often hold ourselves to high standards, and when we don't meet them, we can be harsh and critical. But the practice of loving-kindness teaches us to be gentle with ourselves. From there, we extend this love and kindness to others. We wish them happiness, health, and peace. The more we practice metta, the less we find ourselves attached to the opinions or judgments of others. We begin to see everyone, including ourselves, as deserving of love and kindness. This practice softens our hearts and breaks down the barriers of attachment and fear. 4. Embracing impermanence. In Buddhism, one of the central teachings is the concept of impermanence, the understanding that everything is constantly changing. Nothing in this world is permanent, not even our thoughts or emotions. This idea can be both comforting and liberating. When we understand that everything is in a state of flux, we no longer feel the need to hold on to things. Whether it's a material possession, a relationship, or a fleeting emotion, we learn to let go. We don't cling to moments, because we know they will pass. And when things don't go as we expect, we can accept that this, too, is part of life's natural flow. Impermanence is not something to fear, it's something to embrace. This practice helps us release our attachment to outcomes. If we fail at something, or if life doesn't turn out the way we planned, we remember that everything is temporary. Just as the seasons change, so too will this moment pass. And with it, any pain or disappointment we may feel. 5. Non-attachment to identity. Another essential Buddhist practice is non-attachment to identity. We often define ourselves by our roles, whether it's as a student, a parent, a worker, or even by the way others see us. We think, I am this person, and we attach ourselves to that idea. But Buddhism teaches us that we are not our roles, our job, or even our achievements. Our true nature is beyond all of these labels. We are simply beings experiencing life, moment by moment. When we stop clinging to our identity, we release the pressure to live up to others' expectations or our own self-imposed standards. We become free to simply be, without the need to define ourselves by external factors. This practice of non-attachment to identity allows us to find peace in just existing, without the need for validation or recognition. 6. The practice of detachment in daily life. Detachment doesn't mean we don't care about the world or the people in it. In fact, it's the opposite. When we release attachment, we can love more deeply and more freely. We stop clinging to the need to control outcomes or people, and instead, we allow them to exist as they are. In daily life, detachment can be practiced in many simple ways. For example, when someone disagrees with us or criticizes us, we don't have to internalize their words. We can listen, understand their perspective, and then let go of any negative feelings that arise. Another example is in our relationships. Instead of holding on to the idea that someone must behave in a certain way for us to be happy, we can practice loving them as they are. We let go of expectations and allow the relationship to evolve naturally. This type of detachment brings greater harmony and peace into our interactions. 7. The art of letting go. Letting go is an art, and like any art, it requires practice. It's about gradually learning to release our need to control everything around us. With every small step of letting go, whether it's a thought, a possession, or an expectation, we become lighter. This process doesn't happen overnight. It's not about being perfect, it's about making progress. Each time we practice letting go, we free ourselves a little more from the chains of attachment. We start to experience life with a greater sense of peace, contentment, and joy. By incorporating these practices into your daily life, you'll begin to notice subtle shifts in how you experience the world. You'll find that you no longer feel weighed down by attachments and overthinking. Instead, you'll experience more freedom and clarity as your mind becomes less cluttered and your heart more open. Let go, and watch as your life transforms into one of greater peace and tranquility. It's not about doing more. It's about letting go of the unnecessary and allowing life to flow as it is. The role of mindfulness in finding inner peace. In the busy world we live in today, our minds are constantly racing. Thoughts fly by like a whirlwind, and it feels like we can hardly catch our breath. We're always thinking about what happened in the past, worrying about what's to come in the future, or stressing about things that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. This constant mental chatter pulls us away from the present moment and from finding the inner peace that we all long for. So, how do we find peace amidst this chaos? The answer is simple: mindfulness. Mindfulness is a practice that comes from Buddhist teachings, and it is one of the most powerful tools for calming the mind and finding true peace. At its core, mindfulness is about paying attention, just paying attention, to what's happening right now, without judgment or distraction. It's about being fully present in the moment, whether you're sitting, walking, eating, or talking to someone. It's about experiencing life as it comes, without the constant worry about the past or future. Think about a moment when you were truly present. Maybe it was during a peaceful walk in nature, a quiet moment with a loved one, or even a time when you were deeply immersed in an activity you enjoy. In those moments, everything else fades away. You're not thinking about your to-do list or whether people like you. You're simply living, fully aware and at peace. That's mindfulness in action. When we practice mindfulness, we start to see how much time we spend either thinking about the past or worrying about the future. Both of these things are out of our control, yet our minds often focus on them, which keeps us in a state of anxiety and stress. By bringing our attention to the present moment, we can release those thoughts. We don't have to let them control us anymore. And that's where true peace comes from, when we stop letting our thoughts dominate our lives. The key to mindfulness is observation, not participation. When you practice mindfulness, you're not trying to change your thoughts. Instead, you observe them without judgment, without getting attached to them. You might notice a thought pop into your head like, "I'm not good enough," or "This situation is stressing me out." Instead of diving into these thoughts and letting them take over, you simply notice them. You acknowledge them, but you don't give them any power. You realize that thoughts are just thoughts. They come and go. They don't define you. This shift in perspective is liberating. When you practice mindfulness, you create a space between you and your thoughts. You are no longer controlled by them. You are the observer, not the participant. And in that space, you can experience peace. Mindfulness is also about being aware of your body and your senses. Often, our minds are so caught up in thoughts that we forget to notice what's going on with our bodies. But when we take a moment to really feel what's happening in the present moment, we start to connect with ourselves on a deeper level. We feel the ground beneath our feet, the breath moving in and out of our lungs, the sensations in our hands and face. This awareness of the body brings us back to the here and now. It grounds us and reminds us that we are alive, and that is enough. One of the most beautiful things about mindfulness is that it doesn't require anything special. You don't need to go to a quiet retreat or meditate for hours on end. Mindfulness can be practiced in the smallest of moments. You can be mindful when you're drinking a cup of tea, feeling the warmth of the mug in your hands and the steam rising to your face. You can be mindful when you're listening to someone speak, truly hearing their words without getting lost in your own thoughts. You can be mindful when you're washing the dishes, focusing on the water running over your hands, in the feeling of the soap on the plates. The power of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. It's about bringing your full attention to whatever you're doing in the present moment. The more you practice this, the easier it becomes to release the stress and worries that fill your mind. With time, mindfulness becomes a natural way of living. Now, let's talk about how mindfulness helps in finding inner peace. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see that many of our worries and fears are just mental habits. We get caught up in thinking that things should be a certain way, or that we need to control everything in our lives. But through mindfulness, we begin to let go of these attachments. We start to realize that life is not something to be controlled. It's something to be experienced. One of the biggest sources of suffering in life is our resistance to what is. We fight against the present moment, wishing it were different. We resist difficult emotions, thinking that we shouldn't feel angry, sad, or afraid. But mindfulness teaches us to embrace whatever comes, without judgment. When we accept the present moment as it is, we let go of the need for control, and we create space for peace. Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering is craving and attachment. We crave things to be a certain way, and we attach ourselves to outcomes, people, and experiences. But when we practice mindfulness, we start to see that we don't need to attach ourselves to anything. We can simply be present with what is, without the need to hold on or push away. And in that freedom, peace arises. Mindfulness also helps us to cultivate compassion, both for ourselves and for others. When we're mindful, we become more aware of our own emotions and reactions. We learn to treat ourselves with kindness and patience, instead of criticizing ourselves for every little mistake. We also become more compassionate toward others, because we see them not as objects or obstacles in our lives, but as fellow human beings who are also struggling to find peace. As you continue to practice mindfulness, you'll start to notice a change in the way you approach life. You'll begin to react less and respond more. You'll find that you're less attached to outcomes, less concerned with what others think, and more at ease with whatever comes your way. You'll start to trust yourself and the process of life, knowing that everything is unfolding as it should. In the end, mindfulness is not just a practice, it's a way of life. It's about waking up to the present moment and fully embracing the experience of being alive. It's about letting go of the constant need to control and instead finding peace in the flow of life. When you make mindfulness a part of your everyday routine, you will discover that inner peace was always there. It was just waiting for you to notice. So, take a moment right now. Take a deep breath. Feel the air moving in and out of your lungs. Notice the sensations in your body. And just be present. This is mindfulness. This is the path to inner peace. How overthinking impacts relationships. When we overthink, it's like standing in a fog. Everything becomes unclear, and the people around us seem further away than they truly are. Overthinking is not just a burden we carry alone. It affects how we connect with others, how we trust them, and how we allow love and understanding to flow between us. Picture this. You send a text to a friend or a loved one, and they don't reply right away. Suddenly, your mind starts spinning. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? What if they don't care about me anymore? In reality, they might simply be busy, but overthinking creates a story in your head. A story that might not even be true. How many relationships have been strained because of these imagined stories? One of the biggest challenges in relationships is trust, isn't it? Overthinking chips away at trust. Instead of giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, your mind creates doubts. You analyze their words, their tone, even their silences. The simple, "I'm fine," can feel like a puzzle you need to solve. But here's the truth. Overthinking rarely leads to understanding. It only leads to more confusion and distance. In Buddhism, there's a beautiful teaching about non-grasping. It means not clinging to every thought that arises. When you grasp onto every small detail in a relationship, every word, every look, every silence, you start to lose the bigger picture. Relationships are about connection, not control. They are about flowing together, not holding on too tightly. Overthinking can also create a constant fear of rejection. You might hesitate to share your true feelings because you're afraid of how the other person will react. This fear builds walls between you and others. You might think you're protecting yourself, but in reality, you're keeping yourself isolated. How can love grow when we're too afraid to open the door? Think of a glass of water. If you keep stirring it, the water becomes cloudy. But if you let it sit still, the water clears, and you can see through it. Our minds are the same. When we stop overthinking, we can see people and situations more clearly. We can respond with calmness and kindness instead of reacting with worry or fear. Overthinking often leads to miscommunication. Have you ever misinterpreted someone's words because you were reading too much into them? Maybe they said something simple, but you added layers of meaning that weren't really there. This happens because overthinking makes us focus on what we fear rather than what the other person truly said. It's like listening to an echo instead of the original sound. Buddhism teaches us the value of presence. When we are fully present in a conversation, we're not stuck in our own minds, replaying past arguments or worrying about what might happen next. We're simply there, listening with an open heart. This kind of presence is a gift we can offer to others, and it's also a gift to ourselves. Overthinking can also make small problems feel like giant mountains. A minor disagreement can spiral into hours of worry. You replay the argument in your head, analyzing every word. But ask yourself, does this really help? Most of the time, overthinking doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it bigger. Have you ever noticed how overthinking can drain the joy out of a relationship? Instead of enjoying the moment, you're stuck in your head, questioning everything. If your friend or partner is smiling, you might wonder, are they really happy? Or are they just pretending? If they're quiet, you might think, are they upset? Or do they just need some space? Overthinking turns moments of connection into moments of doubt. Here's a simple truth. People are not perfect. Relationships are not perfect. But that's what makes them beautiful. When we stop expecting perfection, when we stop overthinking every detail, we can start to appreciate the messy, wonderful reality of being human. One way to overcome overthinking in relationships is to practice compassion. Instead of assuming the worst, try to see things from the other person's perspective. If they're quiet, maybe they're tired. If they make a mistake, remember that you've made mistakes too. Compassion softens the edges of overthinking and brings warmth to our connections. Another powerful practice is mindfulness. When you catch yourself overthinking, pause. Take a deep breath. Bring your attention back to the present moment. Ask yourself, what is really happening right now? Most of the time, the present moment is not as scary as the stories our minds create. It's also helpful to communicate openly. If you're unsure about something, ask. Don't let your mind create answers that might not be true. For example, if you're worried that your friend is upset with you, simply say, "Hey, I've been feeling like something might be bothering you. Is everything okay?" Honest communication can clear up misunderstandings before they grow. Letting go of overthinking doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start trusting. Trusting yourself, trusting others, and trusting the natural flow of life. It means accepting that you can't control everything, and that's okay. Relationships thrive when we let go of the need to control and allow space for growth and understanding. Think about a tree. It doesn't cling to its leaves when the seasons change. It lets them fall, trusting that new ones will grow in time. In the same way, we can let go of our overthinking, trusting that our relationships will grow stronger when we allow them to breathe. Overthinking can make relationships feel heavy, but they are meant to be light. They are meant to bring joy, support, and connection. When we let go of the unnecessary thoughts, we make space for laughter, love, and understanding. So the next time you catch yourself overthinking in a relationship, pause. Take a step back. Remind yourself that you don't have to figure everything out right now. Trust the process. Trust the people in your life. And most importantly, trust yourself. In letting go of overthinking, you'll discover a deeper, more meaningful way of connecting with others and with yourself. Relationships are not about perfect answers. They're about shared moments, shared understanding, and shared growth. Let go and watch them flourish. Practical exercises to calm the mind. In the busy world we live in today, it's easy to become overwhelmed by constant thoughts. The mind races from one worry to the next, and the noise never seems to stop. But did you know that there are simple exercises we can practice to calm the mind and find peace in the present moment? Let's explore some practical techniques that are grounded in Buddhist teachings, helping you to quiet your mind and find stillness within. First, let's talk about breath awareness. One of the most powerful tools in calming the mind is simply paying attention to your breath. It's something you do naturally, without thinking about it. But when you bring your full attention to your breathing, it becomes a powerful anchor to the present moment. Sit comfortably in a quiet place. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Feel the air entering your body, filling your lungs. Now, slowly exhale. Pay attention to the sensation of the breath leaving your body. Do this for a few minutes. Whenever your mind starts to wander, gently bring your focus back to your breath. This simple act of breathing mindfully can instantly bring calmness to your mind and body. Another great technique is body scanning. Our bodies often hold tension and stress that we may not even be aware of. By doing a body scan, we bring attention to each part of our body, noticing any tension or discomfort, and consciously relaxing those areas. Start at your toes and slowly move up your body, paying attention to each part. Your feet, ankles, legs, stomach, chest, shoulders, arms, neck, and head. As you move through each area, notice how it feels and allow it to soften and relax. This practice not only helps to calm the mind, but it also promotes a deep sense of relaxation and well-being. Next, let's explore mindful walking. Walking may seem like a simple task, but when we do it mindfully, it can become a form of meditation. The next time you go for a walk, try to be fully present with each step. Pay attention to the sensation of your feet touching the ground. Notice the movement of your legs and how your body shifts with each step. Take in the sights, sounds, and smells around you. But don't get lost in thoughts about the past or future. Just be with the experience of walking in that moment. Walking in this way helps to ground you and brings your focus back to the present. Now, let's talk about mantra repetition. A mantra is a word or phrase that you repeat to help focus the mind. It's a practice that has been used in Buddhism for centuries. You can choose a simple word like peace, calm, or love. Or you can use a traditional mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum. Repeat the mantra silently to yourself, either during meditation or throughout your day. Let the sound and rhythm of the mantra calm your thoughts and bring your focus back to the present. When your mind starts to wander, gently guide it back by repeating the mantra. This practice helps to quiet the mind and shift your focus away from distractions. One more technique to consider is loving kindness meditation. In this practice, you cultivate feelings of compassion and kindness, first towards yourself and then towards others. Begin by sitting quietly and bringing to mind a person you care about. Imagine them surrounded by love and warmth. As you breathe, silently wish them happiness, health, and peace. Then, turn the focus inward and offer those same wishes to yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live in peace. Once you have cultivated these feelings towards yourself, expand your loving kindness to others, family members, friends, strangers, and even those with whom you may have conflicts. This practice not only calms the mind, but it also opens your heart and encourages feelings of connection with others. Another useful exercise is visualization. In this practice, you imagine a peaceful, serene place, a place that makes you feel calm and relaxed. It could be a beach, a forest, or a quiet garden. Close your eyes and picture yourself in that place. Imagine the sounds, the smells, the sights around you. Feel the warmth of the sun, the cool breeze, or the peaceful stillness of the environment. Let this mental image fill your mind and bring a deep sense of calm. Visualization helps to shift your focus from stress and anxiety to a place of inner peace. Let's also consider the practice of gratitude. Sometimes, our minds are clouded with negative thoughts or worries about the future. A simple way to calm the mind is by practicing gratitude. Every day, take a moment to reflect on the things you're thankful for, no matter how small they may seem. It could be something as simple as a warm cup of tea, a beautiful sunset, or a kind word from a friend. Writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day helps shift your focus away from what's lacking in your life and toward the abundance you already have. Along with gratitude, it's important to practice acceptance. We often spend our time resisting what is happening in the present moment, wishing things were different. But when we accept things as they are, without judgment or resistance, we release a lot of mental tension. If you find yourself feeling stressed or overwhelmed, take a moment to simply accept your current feelings. Say to yourself, it's okay to feel this way. Accepting your thoughts and emotions, without trying to change them, can bring an immediate sense of calm. Lastly, let's talk about detaching from the need to control. A lot of mental stress comes from trying to control everything around us. We worry about how things will turn out, we plan obsessively, and we try to predict every outcome. But the truth is, we can't control everything. Life is unpredictable. By letting go of the need to control every situation, you can free yourself from unnecessary stress. Trust that things will unfold as they are meant to, and practice surrendering to the flow of life. As you incorporate these practices into your daily life, you'll notice a shift in your mental state. Over time, you'll find that your mind becomes quieter, your stress levels decrease, and your overall sense of well-being improves. The key to calming the mind is consistency. Just like any other skill, it takes practice. But with patience and dedication, you can train your mind to be more peaceful and present. These exercises not only calm the mind, but they also bring you closer to the core teachings of Buddhism, the practice of mindfulness, awareness, and letting go. Remember, the goal is not to stop thinking completely. Thoughts will always arise, but the goal is to cultivate the ability to observe them without getting caught up in them. With these practices, you can transform your relationship with your thoughts and learn to experience the present moment with clarity and peace. Conclusion: embrace the peace within. As we come to the end of this journey together, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. Throughout this video, we've explored the deep wisdom of Buddhism and how it can help us release the heavy burden of overthinking and attachment to others. But now, the most important question remains. Are you ready to embrace peace within yourself? Let's go back to where we began. We live in a world that constantly demands our attention, our thoughts, and our emotions. The pressures of life, whether from work, family, or society, can pull us in all directions. We often find ourselves caught in this web of worry, thinking that the opinions of others define us, or that our worth is somehow tied to their approval. But the truth is, this constant overthinking, this attachment to what others think, is like carrying a heavy backpack. It weighs us down, clouds our judgment, and prevents us from experiencing true peace. You see, the key is not in trying harder to please others or fix every little thing in our lives. The key is in letting go of the need to control every situation, every relationship, and every thought. Buddhism teaches us that peace comes not from the outside, but from within. It's about detaching from the endless cycle of thoughts and judgments that keep us trapped in stress and anxiety. It's about creating space in our minds and hearts to simply be, without the pressure of being anything other than ourselves. But how do we do this? How do we embrace peace in a world that constantly tries to pull us away from it? The first step is awareness. Awareness of how much we are caught in the web of overthinking and how much energy we are wasting on things that don't truly matter. Once we become aware of this, we can start to make conscious choices. We can choose to let go of the thoughts that weigh us down, the worries that drain our energy, and the attachments that keep us tied to things outside our control. In Buddhism, this is called mindfulness. It's the practice of being fully present in each moment, without judgment or attachment. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see the world as it truly is, without the filter of our overthinking or the lens of others' opinions. We start to see things clearly, with a sense of calm and clarity that comes from being in the present moment, not lost in the past or future. This is where true peace resides. The next step is to practice detachment. Detachment doesn't mean that we stop caring about others, or that we become cold and indifferent. It means that we stop attaching our sense of self-worth to external factors. We stop seeking validation from others, and instead, we find our worth from within. We realize that our happiness doesn't depend on what others think of us, or on the approval of society. It comes from living authentically, in alignment with our true selves. You might be wondering, is this really possible? Can I really stop overthinking and caring about what others think of me? The answer is yes, but it takes practice. Like any new habit, it takes time and consistency. But with each step you take, you'll start to feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. You'll begin to see how much energy you've been wasting on things that don't serve you, and how much peace there is when you let go. One of the most beautiful teachings of Buddhism is the concept of impermanence. Everything in life is temporary. Our thoughts, our emotions, our relationships, and even our very lives. When we understand this, we realize that nothing is worth holding on to forever. Nothing is permanent. So why should we hold on to worries, anxieties, and attachments that only cause suffering? The more we embrace this truth of impermanence, the more we can let go and find peace in the present moment. It's important to remember that peace is not a destination. It's a way of living. It's a daily practice of letting go, of choosing not to overthink, and of embracing the present moment with an open heart. You don't need to have all the answers, and you don't need to please everyone. The only thing you need to do is be true to yourself and trust that the peace you seek is already within you. Now, as you move forward in life, remember this. The more you let go of the need for approval, the more you'll find peace. The more you release attachments, the more you'll be able to live fully, without fear, without worry, and without stress. And most importantly, the more you embrace the present moment, the more you'll experience the deep, lasting peace that comes from within. At Wisdom Woven, we've shared these teachings to guide you on your path to inner peace, but the real work begins with you. It's up to you to take these lessons and put them into practice in your own life. Every time you catch yourself overthinking or worrying about what others think, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this is temporary. This does not define me. I am at peace. So, as we conclude this video, I invite you to take a moment to reflect. How can you start to let go of overthinking? How can you release attachments and embrace peace within yourself? What small steps can you take today to live more mindfully, more peacefully, and more authentically? Thank you for staying with us until the end. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Remember, peace is not a faraway dream. It's something you can begin to experience right now. It's within you, waiting for you to embrace it. So, take a deep breath, let go, and let peace fill your heart. You've got this.